Good afternoon. My,
Hey, good afternoon.
my name is Charlotte Jones Burton. I am the co-founder and president of Women of Color in Pharma. I just would like to welcome all of our listeners as well as our guest today, Peju Oshisanya, who is going to talk to us today as a part of our Real Talk series, webinar series. This series we started last year and we've been wonderfully surprised by it. What we like to do here is feature women such as Peju who have powerful stories to share with us, who have taken control of their career in order to achieve success. These are women that we deem as authentic, go-getters who have matters that we want to bring to women of color in pharma to help you in your journey. So Peju, welcome.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's a pleasure to be on here, and thanks for being so flexible. You know, WOCIP being a global organization, we really have to work hard on a time slot that works. So I'm quite pleased that we've come up with a solution to record this Real Talk series and share, you know, what I've got to share in terms of my story. So thank you.
Thank you. And as our European lead, co-lead, we know that it's important for you to ensure that we are developing a global organization. And I just thank you for being on the journey with us.
Thank you.
So Peju, why don't we go ahead and get started? Maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, as well from a personal standpoint, but also from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, so I always start by saying that I'm a fabulous mum of two. I've got two boys, a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, so they really do keep me busy. I should really say three boys, including my husband. And, you know, I'm based in the UK, live in London and work in London. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry since leaving university. So I studied pharmacology at the University of Portsmouth in England. And upon completion of my degree, I went into the industry, starting with, and my entry role actually was clinical trial associate. So I discovered the research industry whilst I was studying, and I wanted to be a CRA. And after completion of my degree, I realized that it was a role you needed some sort of experience for before you got it. So my aim was really seeking out the role that will enable me to achieve that goal. And I had to move cities, right? So I applied for a role in a small company in Oxford. So I'm around London in Oxford, and I had to move. So I was there for 7 months, and I did all of their filing, setting up the files according to ICH-GCP, learning and shadowing my project manager on monitoring visits to get the skills. So that's really my entry position into the industry. Following that, then I got a CRA role, which I did for 12 years. And being the type of person I am, not 12 months, I mean, being the person I am very ambitious, and I pushed to become a project manager. So then after 12 months of being a CRA, I moved to Eli Lilly and worked as a project manager in the early discovery phase, working on phase 1 and phase 2 programs. And that really enabled me to learn a lot about drug development process, especially in the phase 1 arena, because the cycle is so quick. You know, from first dose to having your CSR is about 12 to 18 months. So really, I learned very quickly. And really, I took off from there and moved to various large pharmaceutical companies until, you know, really finding myself where I am today in a small startup.
Wow. So you've had a large career at large companies. So a career starting at large companies. And now you mentioned that you're at a startup. Tell us a little bit about what your thought process was in terms of why someone would go from a large company to a small startup. It seems to me that there is a lot, the risk is very different from an employee standpoint in those different settings. So can you share a little bit about why you made the switch?
Yeah, so As I progressed in my career working for large organizations from Eli Lilly to Pfizer to Sanofi Aventis to Takeda, one thing that's always been a constant through that process is the desire to learn and also wanting to be really good at my job. And I think a lot of women listening to this will recognize that, right? So we take on roles that we can certainly do, that we can show people we're good at it, and we work 10 times as hard as everybody so that, you know, we are comfortable in that position. So as I progressed, especially at Takeda, I became a global program manager for an important asset for the organization. And that really exposed me to more senior leadership leaders within the organization. So I sat on the global product team. I was a representative for clinical operations and really working on strategy for the lifecycle management program for that asset. So, and as I was in that role and delivering and excelling to a certain extent, I realized that all I knew was operations, right? I had counterparts from CMC, from commercial, medical affairs, and, you know, I really didn't have any knowledge in terms of what they did, you know. And I look at leaders that I've seen in, you know, in the organization that I want to be like, and I knew that they had a breadth of experience. You know, you could go to them and say, we have an issue with pharmacovigilance, and they will have an idea. Even if they don't have the solution, they will know who to speak to or have a little understanding of what you mean and point you in the right direction. And I felt that was missing for me. That desire to really broaden out my experience so that I knew more than just operations and study recruitment, coupled with the fact that the organization at the time was going through reorganization, and they relocated the development team to Boston. And whilst I was, you know, offered relocation, you know, I didn't want to leave the UK. The UK is my home, right? So that's the desire and the shifting landscape, really, right? Those two things really pushed me to look outside of Takeda. Charlotte, before this, I was very comfortable. And there was a time that I even thought, I don't think I'll find anything better out there. You know, this is home. I'm going to sit here and just retire here, right? So when all of that happened, I started looking for new opportunities. And, you know, there were opportunities in other big pharmas, but London is a hotbed for startup organizations. So startups that have been backed by VCs, venture capitalist companies, or spin-offs from universities. So I had a little bit of exposure to that and just was really intrigued, right? As I was going through that process, I came across Benevolent AI. I didn't know anything about the company. At the time, I thought it was a device company. So I just thought, I'll talk to them because they're only 5 minutes down the road from where I am now. That's, you know, looks, you know, close enough. And I explored that opportunity, and I took the bold step of really stepping into a role in a startup environment.
Wow, that's an impressive story. It sounds like a couple of things. So along your journey, you began to observe characteristics in your colleagues that you aspired to have. You saw that you were able to be of most value to the company if they had that broad functional experience, different functions. And so that planted the seed to you that, one day, you know, that might be something that I want to have those tools in my toolbox. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, it sounds like, is that you were keeping your finger on the pulse as it related to the industry and things that were changing around you. And while you were comfortable, it sounds to me like there was a great deal of agility that you were able to employ that allowed you to make a move, right? You weren't and then the third thing that you said that I think is really important is you knew what was non-negotiable.
Yes.
You are from the UK, your family, you mentioned when you started that you have 2 sons and a husband. So your family is very grounded in the UK. So for you, relocating to the US, albeit there was a job there, was a non-negotiable for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you took control of your career and your life by basically saying, now's my time, and let me look in this area, in my area. And you came across the company where you are now.
Yeah, and that third point is really important, and that is definitely something I did realize very early on in my career, because and I'm sure it's the same in the US, where jobs are just located all over the country and you get relocation easily, and lots of the big organizations offer them.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not sure that relocation is what you want to do, it's certainly not the right thing. If you're really keen to move, perfect, right? But if you move just because the offer is there, and when you want to move to the next job, are you going to move again? And I also say that when you move to a new country or new place, you want the job to be easy, right? You don't want it to be something you're working at, because you're figuring out settling down in a new area or new country, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was important that with my boys still quite young, to be steady in the UK, but not to be afraid of looking outside of my comfort space, really, and just make it work, right? And make it work and progress and fight for what I want. And that was one of the biggest driver.
Well, kudos to you for knowing
Thank you.
what you want, but more importantly, what you don't want. I think that sometimes that's even more important, and really being able to stand your ground. So you made the leap.
I did.
And so tell us a little bit about the new company. You said it's a startup. What is that like? And so let's start there. What is that like?
So, I mean, the company is actually growing now, and it's not such, my part of the company is very small. It's like 4 of us now, growing from 2 to 4. So Benevolent AI is an artificial intelligence company, and they use their AI platform for drug discovery, from identification of drug targets to looking to repurpose already existing medicines, to identifying, new chemical entities, designing new molecules. They do all of that and work through in silico validation to preclinical studies to really taking it into the clinic. So when I joined the organization, they needed somebody to actually come into the organization and set up their development arm, right? So they spent a number of years developing the technology part of the organization. So they had in-licensed an asset. That asset was phase 3 ready, but they were looking to explore it in a new indication. So this was going to be a phase 2B program, and I worked in Parkinson's disease. So I came in and spoke to the chief medical officer, also excited, offered me the position. And he said, Peju, I want you to set up this phase 2 clinical trial. We really need to be starting in the next eight months to a year. And I only want 5 SOPs. And I was like, sure, this is a challenge I can do. And yes, we'll have 5 SOPs. So I don't want people to think that, I went in with all of my eyes open. I was quite naive actually going into that role. And, the first few months were a challenge, and that was when I feel like my resilience actually came to the fore, right? Because I went in an expert in operations and I could start any studies, but that's not the only thing you need to start the study, right? So I went in. I was told that, we've got X kilogram of API, would manufacture it to tablet and would start the trial. I got there, and then there was an issue with the API. That API had to be requalified, which meant that there was CMC work in chemistry. What do I know about CMC and chemistry, right? The closest I've been is really telling my clinical supplies colleagues to say, we've chosen these countries, let us know where the depots are and when the drugs will be delivered to site. And that was it. So I became responsible really for resolving the problem we have with the API, right? And making sure that does not become a rate limiting factor to starting the program. So I had to learn and get textbook out and find out what the difference is between drug substance and drug product. I mean, that's how naive I was at that time. Okay. Understand, what CMC really, really do, and, how it fed into the briefing book I was also working on. And I'd never worked in regulatory, right? Because we were preparing for pre-IND meeting at the time. And my first 6 months was a whirlwind, right? It was going online, reading textbooks, and most importantly, actually, relying on my network. Now, I know there are, instances within WOCIP where we talked about the power of the network, building them, investing in them. And, I think I wouldn't be here without my network. Being able to call colleagues I'd worked with before to just help me understand what was going on, to point me to a right consultant to bring on board, to suggest how I could move it forward really did help. And this was across all functions. So I'm talking CMC, regulatory, pharmacovigilance, quality assurance, okay, everything I was responsible for there, because they saw me coming into the organization as a pharmaceutical industry expert. So they looked to me to answer all those things. So it's all about, wanting to learn, fighting it, really putting the effort and fighting and leveraging my network and researching and talk to a lot of people, and really making it work. So today I can say, wow, I enjoyed it, but at the time it was painful and quite scary because I didn't want to lose my job in 3 months,
I totally understand. And one of the things that you brought up, I just want to highlight, the WOCIP leadership team read a book recently called How Women Rise: Break the 12 Habits That Are Holding You Back from Your Next Job, Promotion, or your next raise. And that book was invaluable. And one of the habits that it says that we as women need to break is having a network and not leveraging it. And it seems as if you were thrown into a role where you had you knew what you knew, but you didn't know what you didn't know. And when you had that early challenge of that came up in terms of the API and saying, wait a minute, do we have the product? And how do we get from API to the product? You were able to stop and say, who's in my network? Yeah. And I'm not alone. I just need to reach out and leverage the network that I've had. You mentioned you've been at, wow, you said Lilly, you've been at, I think you said Pfizer, Takeda. Yeah. So you've been at all of these major companies, and I can only imagine over the years the network that you've built. And so you were able to help you get through this. You were able to leverage your network. How did it turn out in terms of the study that you were supposed to get started?
So it did start, and we've completed it. We're actually working on the CSR currently. So, and it's the first study for the organization, in humans. So it's a big milestone. And to be at the helm of really driving that program and delivering it is just an amazing feeling. So for me, this environment is key. And layering it on top of that, the opportunity to learn about potential impact of AI on our industry, to actually incorporate elements of that into a trial, ticks the box of learning something new and really being at the forefront of innovation. So there have certainly been ups and downs, very challenging days, but all in all, I look back at the Peju at, my last pharma organization, and even sometimes I think, why the heck did I stay so long? Why didn't I have the courage to just look earlier? But I guess the stimulus or the push was really the reorganization that was happening, and I'm happy to have made that decision and really followed through. And just to revert back to the networking, I mean, I network a lot. I see the value in it. And, as I, think about what I want to do moving forward, how I want to grow, I try and, identify people who may be able to help me along the way, even by mentoring or just having conversation, pointers, people that will send you papers on areas that they know you're interested in, That's a fantastic context. You get all this information without even having to Google anything. They just say, oh, I read this paper and I thought of you. And that's only because, you know, you've been spending time with them. I mean, even only yesterday, I was at a lean-in group meeting local in London. There were a number of IP attorneys there and people in the biomedical field and people working with VCs. And I think I was the most junior and not so relevant person in the group. But just chatting to them and learning and understanding the challenges was awesome. So I do that a lot. I see the value because it's paid for me. And I encourage people to put an effort into building their network and leveraging it. People actually are happy to do stuff because I'm happy to give support to people. So why shouldn't I ask? And people are happy to help.
Yeah. So I can only imagine that someone is listening to us and they're saying, you know, you're speaking about building a network and leveraging a network as if it's easy. And for them, it's not so easy. And they don't know how to, what that really means to leverage their network. So can you give us a concrete example of maybe a person that you was in your network and you leveraged them, and just break down what that means?
Okay. So leveraging your network is basically being able to develop a good relationship with somebody perhaps you worked with before or you met at a conference, whatever, a relationship around a mutual interest. Okay, so it could be you both, you know, have an interest in a certain therapeutic area, you were similar conference around that, or just even being in the pharmaceutical industry, full stop. And that mutual interest encourages conversations. And, you know, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. Okay, I don't know how many people use it. I stalk people on LinkedIn. I know my counterpart one day also stalks people on LinkedIn. So I'll have to call her out on that. And, you know, you can contact people on LinkedIn and say, I saw you presented on this topic. That's very interesting. Do you have 10 minutes to talk about it or share your slides with me? I wasn't able to attend the conference. You know, I do go to lots of dinners and coffees in London. You know, if people are local, you can certainly do that. And people are looking actually to make connection, share ideas that are mutually beneficial. So if you put the effort to just have those type of connections, and the day comes that you need them, so maybe this person is a physician or is a pharmacovigilance expert, to say, by the way, I actually have a question about work, have you got 5 minutes? They will answer, you know, they will say, yeah, sure, let me help. So it's not easy, definitely. It requires investment of time. Okay, a lot of people might not believe this when I say this. I'm actually quite shy in networking. I can be. So, you know, if I'm thrown in a conference and I have to start networking with random people, I struggle a little bit. But once I start talking to people, you don't believe me, Charlotte. But once I start talking to people, then I sort of like go and I'm okay. So it takes a bit of effort and pushing yourself to, you know, step out of your comfort zone. I mean, WOCIP, you know, being part of WOCIP, looking for WOCIP, you know, one day and I, especially for me, is really pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. You know, one day and I attended a conference last year, and that in itself was pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I made a lot of connection at the WOCIP conference. When I got back to England, I connected with everybody on LinkedIn and emailed them and talked to people and talked to different companies. So it's just putting the time in and enjoying it. You know, the joy of getting to know people, having a shared interest in the industry. It can be more specific. You know, if you have an interest in, you know, patient groups or whatever, you find people who share that interest and are happy to talk about it. And that's how you build and then are able to leverage.
I think that's that was great learning and tips for anyone who's watching. What I appreciated from what you said is, one, it's not easy. It does take effort. Two, that you really do need to latch on to some point of interest. And that could be you were at a conference together at the same time. And so it's important to utilize LinkedIn and refer to whatever that point of interest is.
Yes.
have an ask, I also heard you say. So when you link in with someone, you remind them of how you know them, and then there is an ask, and that's just an active, something that kind of keeps the relationship going.
Precisely.
And the other thing that I heard you is when the time comes to then reach back out, you've already put that work in up front.
Yep.
And it makes it easier to then say, you have 5 minutes, I have something specific that I want to speak about.
Precisely. And there'll be instances where you've lost connection with somebody, but then you need their help. But that shouldn't be the norm, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to randomly reach out to somebody you met 10 years ago and say, help me now. Some people might, others might be, no. So, there is, and another thing, one thing actually I did recently around my network, because I actively network, so I have a lot of connections. I've had to invest a little bit of time mapping out my network to really understand, which part of my network am I giving to, which part of my network is given to me, and which part of my network is neutral. Because, we're all very busy with work, family. So if you have to prioritize which part of your network you invest the time in, doing a small exercise like mapping the people in your network. And this can even be done on a personal level. So some people have loads of friends and they're all WhatsApping you at the same time. So if you map out, this network or your group of friends to say, now this is my best buddy, I'll go to the bottom of the earth with them. So you see their message, you respond. And if there's a friend that, it's not so strong, but you can leave the response to a day or two, then rather than, putting energy into everybody and not being able to manage your time, because time management is crucial, So mapping your network, understanding what it is that you're getting out, what you're giving. And so, somebody like One Day I know is keen on giving. She wants to develop young people. So I would imagine somebody like that would focus on, people she's giving to within her network. I like taking, right? So I prioritize those people. I think they're that person's going to help me. I like giving too, but I do like taking a lot. And then you can maximize the opportunities. So it's not a random, let's socialize, we have a drink. And, you have to be a little bit strategic around it in order to maximize what you have.
Wow. And I think that's so important. And in fact, that's one of the goals for WOCIP is really what we focus on is development. So personal and professional development, but strategic networking. And
yes.
What just mentioned in terms of having that network map to help you understand how do you keep your network warm, who do you prioritize, so that then in the future, if you need to leverage them, you've kept them engaged, and that really helps you. So that's the strategic networking. We want to make sure we are doing it. Another word is intention, right? We want to be purposeful and have intention. Well, Peju, I think I could talk to you all day. I know that dinner, you have a dinner meeting and you need to go. But there's one last question. I'm struck by listening to you and the fact that not only did you take a risk, you moved out of your comfort zone. And you mentioned that had you done that sooner, you might have gotten a different result, or the result that you've gotten now, you might have gotten that sooner. Mm-hmm. So I guess my last question for you is, what advice would you tell your younger self?
Oh, wow. Okay. I've got a long list of advice, for my younger self. One that really jumps to top of mind at the moment is the realization that building my career is not a race, it's not a sprint. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the urgency I felt in wanting to develop and really climb the career ladder in the early stages paid off, but it was really exhausting. Okay. And I had a very narrow vision, a narrow view. Okay. I didn't feel I was very smart, although I was very good at what I did. And when I was able to really think and make the transition to knowing that, you know, working life is almost a lifetime, right? And it's a marathon. You have to be smart about it. So then I started realizing that, okay, I really needed to build that or grow the breadth of experience, right? So certainly, you know, if I'd had that advice earlier, it would have been helpful. But that's where I find myself now, really focusing on having that breadth of knowledge. The other thing is, and it's difficult to say, you know, I would say, you know, perhaps don't worry so much and believe in you and be confident. Okay. You know, I may come across as really confident, very direct, and can speak my mind, but God, what's going on inside, you know, it's just something else. And it's so energy zapping. So I'm still learning and trying to do better. So I'm trying to just, you know, calm down, not worry so much and not care so much about what people think, do what I feel feels right to me in the moment and go with the flow. And that is easier said than done, believe you me, especially if you're a type character person like me. Okay. So yeah, it's not worry so much, not care much about what people think because they're actually not looking, but you think they are. And pace yourself, be strategic in your approach. It's not a sprint. And it's about really building that breadth. So, you know, when you're there, you have quality. You're not one of those leaders that speak and people say, oh, what the heck are they talking about? So you see, that's an example of me thinking what people are thinking. Mm-hmm. So it's something I'm constantly working on. Constantly.
I think that's great advice. And the thing that I will just pull from that is the whole belief in yourself. Mm-hmm. And then I also appreciate what you mentioned in terms of your career being not a sprint, but a marathon, and needing to develop core competencies so that when you arrive and become that leader, people can appreciate that. Exactly. Not only do you have breadth, but you have some depth as well. Mm-hmm. So Peju, I want to thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk series on demand. And I just want for our listeners to remind them, and you also mentioned that one of the courageous things that you did last year was join us at our conference in the States. And this year is our third annual conference. We will have it in Atlantic City, New Jersey, which is a destination for anyone who wants to join us. It's going to be November 1st through the 3rd. And our theme this year is the power of you. Own your story, live in your power. And Peju, I can definitely say that you are owning your story and living in your power. And it was great to be here with you, to have this conversation, and I look forward to many more.
Thank you very much. And just to add, if anybody wants to get in touch, because obviously this is recorded, please do get in touch with me on my WOCIP address. And, you know, I'll be happy to help or follow up on any questions.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank